Picture this: New York under dust and smoke, Spider-Man perched on rubble, heroes, both in costume and not, helping amid the wreckage. Even Dr. Doom, of all people, sheds a tear. That haunting scene wasn't fan art or satire. It was Marvel's official response to 9/11. Meanwhile, DC took a different path, weaving the tragedy into quiet tributes rather than placing it directly into continuity. So did the attacks of September 11, 2001 actually happen in the Marvel and DC universes? The answer is yes, but the ways each company chose to address it remain some of the most emotional, debated, and powerful decisions in comic book history. The real-world context. Before diving into capes and continuity, let's ground ourselves. September 11, 2001 was one of the darkest days in modern history. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost, millions more were physically and mentally scarred, and the entire world changed overnight. Comics may be filled with aliens, gods, and mutants, but at their core, they are human stories, written by human creators. And in the aftermath of 9/11, those writers and artists faced an impossible choice. Should superheroes acknowledge this tragedy, or should the line between fiction and reality remain untouched? Marvel's bold response: the Ground Zero issue. Marvel chose to face the tragedy head on. Just 2 months after the attacks, The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2 number 36 hit shelves. The cover was stark black, no logo, no art, just grief. Inside, there were no battles, no witty quips, no costumes dominating the page. Instead, Spider-Man arrived at Ground Zero, standing shoulder to shoulder with firefighters, police officers, and stunned civilians. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and even villains like Magneto and Kingpin appeared, not as saviors but as mourners. The most shocking moment, Dr. Doom shedding a tear. Was it in character? Probably not, but that wasn't the point. Marvel's message was clear. Even the hardest hearts were shaken. Then came the gut punch line. The real heroes are the firefighters, the cops, the doctors, the people who face death to save lives. Spider-Man was the perfect anchor for this issue. A lifelong New Yorker, he wasn't a god or billionaire. He was one of them. His tears and uncertainty mirrored the city's collective heartbreak. In one unforgettable panel, a firefighter looks at him and asks, "Where were you?" A chilling reminder that this was one fight superheroes couldn't win. Marvel's extended tributes. Marvel didn't stop with one Spider-Man issue. They launched several projects to honor and process the tragedy. Heroes 2001, the 64-page benefit book that showcased vignettes of real-world bravery. There were no supervillains, just firefighters, police officers, paramedic volunteers who risked their lives. All proceeds went to relief funds. A Moment of Silence, 2002, an anthology told entirely without dialogue, forcing readers to process grief through imagery alone. Panels of running and praising, mourning and helping. One story showed a young boy imagining Captain America comforting him. Captain America, The New Deal, 2002. The first 6 issues of Cap 3 launch series dealt directly with post-9/11 themes. Steve Rogers confronted terrorism, hate crimes, and the uncertainty of a shaken world. Some critics praised the boldness, others argued it blurred the line between patriotism and propaganda. But it undeniably captured America's mood in the early 2000s.
Marvel also wove subtle nods to 9/11 throughout its titles.
Heroes attended memorials and funerals, reflected on their responsibilities. Daredevil, weighed down by Catholic guilt, struggled with his city's suffering. Even the X-Men drew parallels, discussing prejudice and fear in the world reeling from terror. Marvel's approach was raw, emotional, and unflinching, a mirror of how readers themselves were coping with trauma. DC's response, a respectful path. DC took a different route. Rather than pleasing Ground Zero, they opted for reverence and restraint. 9/11, the world's finest comic book writers and artists tell stories to remember, Volume 2, 2002. This was DC's primary tribute anthology. Heroes mourned alongside firefighters and civilians, offering comfort rather than rewriting history. Superman didn't stop the planes, Batman didn't solve the attack, they simply stood in solidarity, emphasizing that real-world bravery belonged to ordinary people. Adventures of Superman 596, a haunting coincidence. Released on August 29, 2001,
This issue showed damaged towers in Metropolis due to the ongoing Our Worlds at War storyline. After the attacks, DC recalled the issue, realizing how eerily close the imagery was to reality. Many copies were destroyed,
making it a grim collector's item today.
Ex Machina.
2004, under DC's
Wildstorm imprint, Brian K. Vaughan
Ex Machina introduced a hero called the Great Machine. He managed to save one tower from being hit, but not the other,
and the tragedy defined him,
pushing him into politics as New York's mayor. To this day, Ex Machina stands as one of the most nuanced explorations of 9/11 in comics.
Why both universes preserved 9/11 in continuity.
Here's what's remarkable. In both Marvel and DC, 9/11 was treated as sacred. Normally, comic universes reset history constantly. DC erases wars and tragedies during reboots like Crisis on Infinite Earths or Flashpoint. Marvel rewrites its history through events like Secret Wars, but never 9/11. Both companies seem to agree this tragedy was too real, too painful, and too significant
to ever retcon.
Even in alternate universes, the shadow of 9/11 lingers. For Marvel, the day reshaped storytelling. Spider-Man carried survivor's guilt. Captain America wrestled with patriotism and responsibility. The X-Men leaned harder into themes of fear and prejudice. For DC, it reaffirmed the symbolic weight of its heroes. Superman and Batman didn't stop the attacks, but their presence beside ordinary people reminded readers that empathy and solidarity can be the greatest superpowers of all. The controversy. Not everyone agreed with how the comics handled it. Some fans argued Marvel exploited grief, pointing to moments like Doom's tear as wildly out of character. Others counted that ignoring the attacks would have been worse, that comics are cultural mirrors and silence would have felt hollow.
Captain America: The New Deal
drew criticism for straying into propaganda, while DC's approach was praised for subtlety, but also accused of playing it too safe. The debate still rages, but one truth remains. Both companies wrestled with a nearly impossible task: how to honor real-life tragedy without
cheapening.
The real takeaway? Maybe the question isn't whether 9/11 counts in comic continuity. What matters is that comics, our modern myths, reminded us of something deeper. The greatest heroes weren't the ones in masks or capes. They were the people who, when the towers fell, ran towards danger instead of away. So next time you see Spider-Man swinging across New York or Batman watching over Gotham, remember this. In their worlds, just like in ours, 9/11 happened, and it changed everything. Forever. If you liked exploring this powerful corner of comic book history, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to First Curiosity for more deep dives.